Four, three, two, one. Okay, so I'm Archbishop Kraagor of the Mountain. I've been cooking since I was a kid, cooking professionally since I was 18, and doing cooking for Amtgard since I was 16 or so, somewhere around that. I don't really know. You know, my class here is rather like specifically targeted, not necessarily at like how to be a better cook, but we're going to be talking about how to get high level Amtgard awards for cooking stuff, because one of the things that I had to kind of figure out on my own and struggle with was kind of like how to explain why cooking is hard and like what makes it valid, I guess. Not that I think anyone was looking at a wedding cake and going, that shit looks easy, but I do think that, you know, you see it like a suit of plate mail, you can probably pretty easily understand that, okay, that probably took like, you know, this many dozens or hundreds of hours to construct, and then like I could never make a suit of, you know, fluted plate mail or whatever, so wow, that's spectacularly amazing, that's clearly worth like a tenth. But you see like a meal and you're like, no, I probably couldn't do exactly that, but I don't know, I can make pasta. So how hard could it really be to make all of like, whatever stuff. So we're going to start with the biggest point. This is the biggest takeaway for getting. We're going to say this is focusing. Let's say anything above 6. I feel like 7, 8, 9, 10 is when people start to like scrutinize. 9, 10 is where you get like a lot of scrutiny, which is good, and that's the point. So point 1, clarity. I started learning this with a particular item. I made a cheesecake, and I used the word icebox cheesecake in my write up, and the some of the reviews from the Dragon Master were like, oh, well, we wish it had been like firmer and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, it's an icebox. It's like, it's not cooked. And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, oh, I understand that I used language that they don't know. So language choice is really important. Use very specific wording and talk a lot. That's the big takeaway that I then started understanding at 8, 9, 10. My write-ups got longer and longer and longer. I don't necessarily think this is a good idea if you're specifically entering Dragon Master. Maybe have like a wee little condensed one for Dragon Master, because you don't want to bore the judges with like, I don't know, I'm sure Lisa can attest, they stretched on for like 12 plus pages at one point. But when you kind of submit it to Regent to go, hey Regent, you know, like whether you did it as a Dragon Master or not, when you're like, hey Regent, look at this cool thing that I did, you can kind of expand quite a bit. And to be clear, there weren't like 12 pages of like paragraph after paragraph. There was reasons for page breaks, and a lot of those pages were pictures and blah, blah, blah. But what you should talk about. Like, they looked a little cartoony, but that was actually kind of the point. That's often how.
Is that my internet or is that his internet?
What you wanted to convey with the flavor or stylistic choices, like, you know, maybe you're just trying to make it taste good, that's fine. But if you had some sort of idea, like if you have like a dragon themed dish, so you're like, I want it to be spicy, that's probably going to be pretty obvious. But don't assume anything. Assume that the regent or the judges or the taste testers or your friends or whoever it is that you're talking to is kind of dumb. Because if you assume they're dumb, you're going to really like explain it too much, and then there's no chance of them missing it. There's no chance of them going, well, I didn't know it was supposed to be spicy because it's a dragon themed thing. Pictures, because again, maybe the person you're sending this to wasn't there. I think Lisa was the regent at one point, and she hadn't attended, or maybe, I don't remember. I know at least at one point someone was the regent and couldn't attend. So pictures, details, notes, like any sort of like changes or tweaks you made along the way that you feel are really important, or some particular detail that you had an extremely specific reason for it. Again, a lot of this, I'm just trying to make it taste good. You don't need to write down, and that was so it would taste good 10 billion times. But if there's something in there that's specific, write it down. Include your recipes every time, obviously. Um, but it's just good for the judges to know that you had something written down. And then, big thing, and this is a huge part of trying to legitimize your craft, time. How much time it took you. It did not fucking occur to me until I was keeping track of it how long this stuff took me. Because one of the things that people who are not immersed in this sphere can struggle with is they're like, well, I don't know, cooking takes a couple of hours. Cooking a big meal maybe takes all day. All day it can be like 16 hours. Some of my later feasts, like my 9-10, would require multiple days of prep work. And then including your practice time and your design time and your debatably even your write-up time, although probably not. Your testing time. I think I should have had my write-ups here because they're all like loaded on my Google Drive. But I think some of this stuff was taking me like 80 hours or more. Which all of a sudden you tell that to a regent or a judge or whatever, and they go, "Oh, that is actually around how long it took, me to do, this big garb piece that I did that I got my like ninth for that I'm very proud of." Because again, what we're trying to do here, because not to be like overly individualistic, but a lot of there's not a great deal of like there is not as much high level cooking stuff going on as there is necessarily like armoring or garbing or other things like that. It's just a little less common. So you need to communicate to the person who you're trying to communicate this to why it took so long and where the time was coming from. Just to give them a frame of reference. Because again, it's so easy to go, well, it's like maybe 16 at most hours of work. And it's like, no, that was like, 100 or whatever it was. And a last thing I like to include in my write-ups, honestly, is a conclusion. It can be pretty brief. Again, you're not trying to bore the regent. You're trying to. And that kind of stuff. It's useful. I give like a closing statement to sum up the whole project, and kind of remind the person who's now spent all this, all of their free time reading your stupid write up, what's going on. So that's point one, clarity. Point two, audience. This is the get the regent to taste your food. Wow, shocking, if you can. Or get the and this is getting into a little bit of like what I think Katie might describe as like gaming. You might trust like me, or they might trust Lisa, or they might trust I mean, they might have trusted Popo or someone else who is already very involved in the cooking sphere. Ken Walker, these kind of people who are already very involved in the cooking sphere. If you're looking to get high level awards and the regent can't be there, but one of these other people maybe can be there, be like, hey man, hey, can you try this? Can you taste this? Can you let the regent know? Can you sign off as, yeah, I ate this and it was tasty, or it was trash, or man, it looks very pretty, or whatever. Next point of audience is get multiple people. Get lots of people. Get as many people as you can. You exponentially increase your chances that someone's going to go, that was really, really good. And it's useful for feedback. If you're not yet perfect at this craft, the more people try it, because taste is subjective. The only way to make objectively better food is to make food that more people find subjectively better. Only way to do that is to get feedback. I can cook a perfect steak, but you might not like a perfect steak rare. If I make a cake and no one likes it, it doesn't matter how well I did it, something's wrong. If I make a cake and everyone likes it, I must have something very, very right. And then everything in between those two extremes, right? And then the last point is get enough people to make the meal worth it. So literally, just on a practical level, if you make a wedding cake that does not serve, two judges. There we go. There's my little PDF here. Thank you. That's actually helpful. Let me go click it and see how goddamn long it is. It's 21 pages. Okay, admittedly, a lot of these pages are literally like big pictures of this is this recipe and blah blah blah. Dang, yeah, 21 pages of write up.
I wasn't going to correct you on the number of pages, but I read it at least 5 times. Just saying.
There you go. Great. Oh my god, I go into a lot of detail. Wow. Okay. Right. So yeah, not necessarily in that order, but who cares? So for the smaller one, for one of the cupcakes, it was just like 6 of them. So whoop de doo. I think I just gave them to like one person, and that was to Lisa, hilarious, and then she shared them. But for the second cupcake round, I made like 24, and they were each personalized to different people, so that's 24 people. For the wedding cake, I brought it to Bhakti, and then the judges ate it, and then I went, okay, well, fuck it, there's still like half a cake left, and just spread it out. So that's just on a practical scale, like get enough people to make the meal worth it. Like you made all this food. So next point, so clarity, audience, theming. This is now getting into a little bit of like a little close to like my opinions. So take this with a wee grain of salt. I think it has to be either at an Amp Guard event or involved in Amp Guard or in fantasy in some way. And certainly that will lend it credibility. So, as frustrating as it might be, if you can bring the food to an Amp Guard event, no one can debate that this wasn't Amp Guard related, even if the food is like, fucking really nice curry chicken. Is that necessarily the most like, you use a modern recipe, is that necessarily the most like fantasy themed thing? No, but you brought it to an Amp Guard event, who really cares? And or, especially as you get to higher levels, like theming it around fantasy-esque things, like using actual historically accurate recipes, perhaps, or even using recipes that are in some way indicative or reflective of some sort of fantasy genre that you're going for, or some sort of fantasy thing that you're going for. What I mentioned earlier about like, this meal is dragon themed. Okay, cool. What? How? Like, is it spicy? Is it literally red? Like, are all the ingredients fucking red? It's like, teehee, get it? It's a red dragon. Did you get a little like dragon plushie and make it part of the presentation? Because fascinatingly enough, not just culturally but scientifically, food is also about its presentation, and food that looks cooler and has better theming factually will taste better, and people will perceive it to be higher quality. So quite literally, if you're like, this is my red dragon themed meal and it's in a red bowl and it's all red stuff, here's a cute little red dragon plushie who I've like, I don't know, in a food safe manner put in the food, that's actually going to increase people's perception of how good the food is. And perhaps most importantly, theming will push away any doubt in anyone's mind that this is not necessarily strictly Amp Guard related, because no one's going to protest that armor's Amp Guard related. No one's going to protest that, garb is Amp Guard related or stick is Amp Guard related. But I could see dissent coming from the peanut gallery about like, well, I don't know, you made a fucking sandwich. I don't really see that's Amp Guard related. And you could probably apply that to lots of different art forms. Like if you did a drawing and the drawing was like not fantasy related, people would be like, you're drawing a spaceship, that's not Amp Guard related, like whatever. So clarity, audience, theming, accuracy and testing. Please use a reliable recipe and test it. This is perhaps like kind of basic concepts, but like do not show up to the Dragon Master or the feast or the whatever with an experiment. I did all of my stuff at least once, if not more than once. And frankly, the ones that I only did once, I think in my conclusion, I even regretted that I only got the one test. Usually twice, sometimes thrice. I think one of them really was not working. I did it like 4 or 5 fucking times before I finalized the recipe. So test. like before the event, whatever it is. And then give yourself lots of room for error, lots and lots and lots. Every single one of the final three, I think. I wish I had more time, and I think I put that in my conclusions, definitely to 9 and 10. I fully was like, God damn it! I actually really wish I'd give myself more time. So how much time do you think you need? Give yourself more, especially if there's a deadline. If this is for an actual like a feast for an event, or you're running private like tasting, or there's some sort of deadline. For the love of God, start as early as you possibly can. You will realize that you needed it. Um, yeah, and the last point on accident testing is this is the only time you get to do it. This is the critical thing of cooking that makes it different from other crafts. You can't as easily correct mistakes. You only get one try. If you're making armor and it gets the deadline and the final bracer piece like snaps and you're like, oh my god, bot D is tomorrow, like that really sucks, but you can probably just submit it in the next Dragon Master. If you are making the chicken and it lights on fire and the guests are already there, like it's over. So as much accuracy and testing as you can. And we're already on the last of my points. Panache and like the wow factor. This is gonna be like the probably the most important point for higher level ones, although really clarity always trumps all of these. Like clarity is just the most important one. But so panache and wow factor. This is kind of what I can attest to as quantity and quality, because I don't really think that you can, unless it's something absolutely mind blowing, it would be difficult to justify getting like a 10 for like, I made a chicken dish. And oh my god, was it good? Like, yeah, if it's like an out of body spiritual experience because it's so delicious, maybe. But like, by the time you're getting up there, it's next point is theming around the thing. This ties back into theming. You know, I started to expand kind of like out beyond just like the cooking factor to towards also like other things that can add to the meal artistically. So my 9 and 10, I had the meals themselves themed around an RP thing that I was running. You don't have to do that. I happen to enjoy running RP stuff and quest like things. I happen to think I'm pretty good at it. Maybe I'm terrible at it. Who knows? But expand upon it. Like it becomes easier and easier in the minds of your monarch to justify the award levels if you're not just making a meal. You're making a meal with a show, with an RP element, with I don't know, like a poem that describes the whole meal in flowery language, with beautifully printed menu cards and like you decorated the hall yourself, with I don't know, like some sort of other additional thing that themes and ties to the food itself, because you don't want it to be fully unrelated. You know, like the food is all like dragon themed and the decorations are fucking like I don't know, Halloween themed. You know, tie it all in. Catering to the audience. If you do know who's going to be eating there, impress them. Make it in some way, shape, or form related to them. Not necessarily like, you know, go and stalk their Facebook profile and figure out what their mom's maiden name is and then use that as the name of one of the dishes. But whatever creative idea you can add, it's going to personalize it. It's going to make it feel better. And again, interesting enough, actually taste better. Give yourself, next point, give yourself deliberate challenges. So again, this is 9 and 10. This is no longer like, I just made really good food. Lisa actually pointed out in the Discord here that I used for one of my things something called Italian buttercream. It's a pointlessly difficult way of doing buttercream. Why? Because it tastes really good. It's tastier than the other two like main famous like European styles, in my opinion. And it's definitely more complicated. So again, whether or not someone's So yeah, deliberate challenges of some kind, like higher level buttercream, or one of the challenges I had for my masterhood was that um I think it was like I had gotten the guests to pick deities, and then I had to create recipes that themed around the deities. So I forced myself to be pigeonholed into specific ways of interpreting what gods they had chosen. Which I reflected then, of course, coming back to the point of clarity in my write up to show the monarch or the regent or whoever um, challenges that I deliberately put upon myself, something that I deliberately made more difficult. Next point I have written down here is difficult techniques. I just talked about that, whatever it is that makes it harder or more interesting or more flavorful or whatever. This can also relate to things that just make things taste better, but just take more effort. So don't use spice blends, grind your own spices. You know, if the recipe calls for oil, test it with butter. Just like changing minute little details that add a little bit more effort on your part that might result in better flavor. Even like pre-warm your fucking plates because you're gonna be serving stuff to let's say like you got 10 people, pre-warm the plates so they're not getting hot food on cold plates that then gets all lukewarm temperature. Blah blah blah. Next point here is total size. So again, think about the size of stuff. As I mentioned earlier, like at this point, I really don't think it's reasonable. Again, with maybe there's a rare exception somewhere, but I can't think of one to serve like a dish. Total size. At this point, we're talking about feasts for events. Although I'll get to that as my last point as a little addendum, or personalized feasts for select few people, or a large multi-part wedding cake. It's got to be big, is the point. Next point is rarity of ingredients. This is just, unfortunately, this is a little bit of a barrier to entry, which I'll talk about at the end. If I forget, please someone remind me about like cost of ingredients. Get rare, expensive zhuji ingredients. One, they're rare and expensive for a reason. They usually, not all the time, but usually taste better than your everyday stuff. It also goes to show that you know what you're doing and why you're picking things and what you're picking, and you can communicate that to your monarch. Be like, hey man, like I actually understand what's going on here, and I know why I'm doing this. And literally, it's just impressive. Someone hears, veal and caviar is more impressive than like, a hamburger and French fries. Relax, take a step back and be like, okay, I'm doing this for fun, right? Like, a lot of people do kind of get lost in like I'm doing this to get this thing. Put your own unique spin on it because it's going to keep it fun for you. And it's going to make it feel like you're not just like hunting down these awards like a laser sight. And if you are creative and you like know you know what you're doing, you can put a unique spin on things and make it a lot better and make it memorable as to it being yours, as to it being something that people didn't see coming, as to it being something that stands above, because that's kind of what at least were I to ever be Imperial Regent, which I have not been, happily, would be looking for a 10th or Masterhood or that kind of stuff is like, well, what made this different from everything else? What made this yours? Why is, Sam's feast really a cut above? Why do I remember it? Why is, this person's food better in some way? So the last two little like addendums that aren't really part of a point is a barrier to entry. There are, unfortunately, I would know because it costs me well over $100 something to do some of these feasts for like 4 people. There are some barriers to entry for cost of ingredients. That's kind of the case with all art. Unfortunately, especially as you get higher and higher level, like there are ways to mitigate cost. I understand that, but like I'm sure like expensive oil painters would know that you get giant fucking perfect canvas and expensive paint and a huge beautiful framing and blah blah blah. The price tag goes up. Um, Garbers are like, I'm buying all this expensive cloth and yada yada, and you have to own a sewing machine, etc., etc. So that is an unfortunate barrier that can't really be removed fully, but you can mitigate it by getting your guests to pay. So the way that I've done this and the way that others have done this in the past is like, if they are doing a private feast, they'll have it be like, it's a fundraiser. So for me, the two that I did were, you bid to get in, and that money first went to paying my expenses, and then went to, I think they went to Felfrost, but they might have gone to the night place. I don't quite remember. And then if you're doing it for a feast for an event, well, that's easy. No barrier to entry. Fuck it. The event pays for all of it. And then the last little addendum point is so what you're going to choose to try to score high level awards. A lot of people kind of imagine it as like, well, how do you get high level awards? Well, feasts. Well, why? Well, because everyone witnesses them and they're big and they're complicated and yada yada yada. I would like to say that is not necessarily the best choice. And not that it can't work, but it pigeonholes you into a very particular kind of food, which is mass-produced, on time, where you can't control what on time means for a general populace and includes allergens. That's a lot of restrictions to put on yourself that are frustrating and not necessarily related to any of my earlier points of like, it's not that's necessarily going to make it better, like a deliberate challenge might be. It's not going to make it better, like a difficult technique might. It's not going to make it better, like a rare ingredient might. Oh, also, fucking rare ingredients out the window. You're on a budget. You're going to be using, like, Costco, if you can, because you got your autocrat, not necessarily being mean to you, but just being like, hey, man, like, why is caviar on the menu? So to get those, like, quantity is a quality of its own, like that's true, and I'm not disparaging those who are trying to get 8, 9, 10 through feasts, but consider doing something else, like maybe be like, hey, feastocrat, can I actually this I think 2 or 3 times make the dessert. So I just made I think my 9th was just a wedding cake, and like it was 3 different layers and it was all themed and blah blah, and decorated yada 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 to make it a wow factor. But that means I didn't need to worry about allergens, because I will be making a cake. If you want to make gluten-free vegan stuff for our gluten-free vegan friends, please go ahead, but I won't. I didn't need to worry about it being on time. I didn't need to worry about it being necessarily like a crowd pleaser or mass-produced in some way. I just went, this is what I'm making. Bam. And then for 9-10, there were private feasts for, I think, 4 people each time. So if this idea of like this daunting task of like, oh my God, how do I have theme and taste and all these different gorgeous factors and artistry and blah blah when I'm serving 80 people on paper fucking plates sometime between 5 and 7 p.m. in a kitchen that literally isn't even mine, and I have to have all these exceptions, step away from that. Hold a private feast. Maybe hold it as part of an event, sure. But my 2 private feasts were just on random days. I was like, hey, all right, you 4 want to get in? All right, well, when are you guys available? Oh, 3 Sundays from now. Okie dokie, that's when we're doing it. So yeah, that's kind of my final point on like, you don't need to pigeonhole yourself into feasts, and frankly, like at least from my personal perspective, and a regent or a monarch may share my opinions, I'm going to be judging feasts just as harshly as I might be judging specialty foods. So even though there's a lot of it, I might go, yeah, like this was really tasty, there was a lot of it, but I don't see any artistry behind this. Sorry. I don't see any really high level artistry behind this. I don't see any really high level decisions being made. I don't see any really like wow factor or spectacular, over the top coolness, because dog, you're serving like 40 people and that's commendable, but if we're looking for more artistry, it's really hard to do that at the same time as serving 40 people. Okay, so clarity, audience, theming, accuracy and testing, and panache and wow factor. Then my 2 appendices. That's kind of my whole spiel. Q&A time. Let me see what I've got. Are there pictures of the wedding cake? Yes, I have numerous somewhere. You're also likely to get a rose. Yes, that is also true. Yes, the chocolate work literally was outside the picture table. Yeah. And actually, as it happens, that screwed me because it was so cold that I couldn't correct my cake. Yeah, so if there's any questiones, either about how to get high level awards or even just like, if no one has any questions about that, ask me questions about cooking. I don't really care. Now's the time to either type them or unmute yourself and ask me. And while you're doing that, I'm going to go try and find pictures of the wedding cake. Buried deep in the fucking Kraagor depths. We'll do it's probably my Instagram. I have Instagram right now. It's on my Insta. I will go to Instagram and fetch these photographs of cake. When are we doing a feast together? Eventually, I'm sure. Someday. I actually didn't do a feast this year. I was a little annoyed because I normally do like one of these like specialty feasts a year, but I just got so mega busy. I'm not even able to keep up with my own shit. Never mind Amcrit stuff. So okay, I'm gonna scroll around here. Where is my cake? Do I have pictures of other cakes? Do I not have a picture of my... Okay, well, I've got... So here's the little cupcakes that I did. And I made all these cupcakes and themed each of them after one of the, at the time, players in Felfrost, and each got a little inscription as well. And then I hand-delivered them all to the... to each Felfroster from which each cupcake came. So, like, Wilbur was the little shield at the bottom. I think Ryan was the little crown top right. Boyd's little broccoli in the chain in the middle, that kind of stuff. Let's see. Where do we... Ain't no way I don't have pictures of that cake. What year was that? How old am I? Oh my god. Aha! Oh goodness, I cannot control my mouse. How much I have to get this up? You need to give the officers to direct them towards an awards, e.g. Dragon Set of Roads. So, weird take. I don't usually like flat out recommending what award an officer should be giving me. I don't even like directly recommending myself for awards. Not that I don't do it, but I prefer to be like, if I think an officer hasn't noticed something, I'll be like, hey, officers, here's the thing I did. And that's just kind of it. There are occasional exceptions. So dragon instead of a rose, especially when it comes to cooking, especially when it comes to specifically feast, that to me, I feel is actually genuinely left best in the hands of the officers. Because I feel like they will look at it and they will, if they're doing their jobs, hopefully, and others were all volunteers, but as best they can, track your orc and go, okay, so, what was I? Lost train of thought suddenly. Got distracted. Sorry, yeah. So they'll look at it and they'll be like, okay, so if you're at 9 dragons and you made like a pretty good feast, but you're at 3 roses, here's a rose, but no, you're not going to get a 10th dragon. I usually, if it's not a feast and I'm just like running it and it's like, okay, here's this thing that I just did. Yeah, I'll give them like, I'll usually be like, hey, by the way, at this time I'm going to be doing this thing and I'm going to send you the write-up thereafter. And I try to get my write-up done within a couple of days. And I try to give them a while to consider. Like, let's say I'll try and run these things like near-ish, let's say like just after mid-rain if I want to hopefully get the award by Coro, because that gives the regent quite a while to read my stupid goddamn 21-page write-up and then talk to the people who were there. And let me know if that doesn't answer your question. Have you ever had to fight to get your dragons because the officers wanted to give you a different award? No. Never. I've had other struggles with other awards, but as it happens, no Never Dragons. There was one big thing that I did that did not give me the next award, and flat out, I think the regent just said, "No, I just don't think it was worth it." And I went, "Okay." And I was like, "Yep, that sounds fair enough to me." I thought it might have been, but I fully accept your decision that no, it wasn't, because that's easier than getting into a bitch slapping fight, and then, I found that you need to wait to slash shop for specific people to be officers because they're more amenable than us. No. I don't happen to remember who the regents were. However, I can foresee a circumstance in which you do not know who the regent is, you do not know who the monarch is, and they are both imperial, and both instances you like, you're trying to run a private feast, or you're trying to bring again, just use wedding cake as an example because it's an easy thing to make look impressive. Trying to bring a wedding cake to a big event, and the regent or the monarch isn't going to be there, or doesn't live in your city, or you don't know who they are. I can understand, be like, oh fuck, I'm just going to wait. I've never had to, but I could fully see it coming of like, you don't know what they like, you don't know who they are, or even who they trust. Okay, fair enough. Wait around until maybe there is someone who you can trust, or if you have someone maybe like your knight or your belt lord or whatever, if they are trusted in the crafting community, ask them to help as well. Either ask them to talk to the regent, or ask them to be the attendee of the feast itself, or or maybe they're not one of the Dragon Master judges, but like, hey, knight, can you pop by and like give my fucking pie a little mouthful, and then give a thumbs up to the regent or whatever. Yes, okay. Did that? I hope that answered all of your questions, Cornoa. Did yes? Ah, great. Why not both? Yeah, no, I mean that is also the ideal. As it happens, I have never done a feast for Amped Guard except once now this year, I think. And it was like a mini feast where I was teaching a cooking class, so I got the other students to do like half the cooking for me. But yeah, weirdly enough, like I've gotten all the way up to master. Yeah, go ahead and unmute. Yeah, that'd be great.
Hi. So I have a question. I did a competition once where it was like a cupcake competition for the skeleton cultural thing, and I did this whole scene on a cupcake with Jolly Ranchers that I molded into like tentacles. It worked, but it was so ungodly sticky that it was a miserable experience. And I also made like a tiny little staff for like a skeleton that I carved out of a Mentos that was like a centimeter tall. Like, how do you deal with like decorative pieces when they're so ungodly sticky that you can't like really manipulate them? Is there like a way to around that?
Oh well, if Lisa knows that, so my answer that I have done with, as it happens, I have not done specifically molten Jolly Ranchers before, but I have done sugar, like I've done like lots and lots of sugar works. Dang, that's hella cool. Yeah. So I've done sugar works, and I've done marshmallow works. So plastic gloves, and or like a neutral oil, like a oh, it's coming to me, Crisco or oil, literally on your hands. And then there's like canola oil is a neutral oil, yeah. And or if the surface you're working on also is getting all fuckety wuckety, something, it's a specialty tool called I think it's a brand name called Silpat. It's like a silicone mat. They're often just sold as like cookie sheets. As long as they themselves are silicone, things can't really stick to that. So you've got plastic gloves with like a teeny tiny bit of canola oil on a silicone mat. And then, I don't know if Jolly Ranchers is special, but probably the things won't stick to you. And will hopefully stick to the thing you want them to stick to.
Yeah, that would have really helped. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah. I never did this for Amtgard because it is so spectacularly difficult and weather dependent and not transportable and requires special equipment, yada yada. But I did like Sugarworks in college. So if anyone really wants to get a high level award, do Sugarworks for Amtgard. And try not to cry, but you can produce some absolutely spectacular stuff with Sugarworks. So I think that like honestly, even like what I'm seeing here of like these little Jolly Rancher chemicals or tentacles, that kind of stuff is a really great example that I would be like, this is exactly what I'm looking for to get high level awards. Yes, you made cupcakes. Yes, they tasted tasty, but also you made like deliberate, over the top, silly decorations out of food to prove just that you like, I can do it. You know. Yes, humidity is evil. On the day of my exam for Sugarworks, it was humid in the room, which the chef, to his credit, went, "Oh well, it's humid. I will mark everyone's as being better than it actually is." So, okay. Any other questions about high level stuff? Or again, if no one has any other questions about like getting high level awards, even just like cooking questions, like Admiral's question there about like how to mold sugar and shit like that. See if I can find any more photos of any of the. Do I have any other photos of this stuff? Oh, I guess actually this is also a cake that I did in fact make for Amgar. I brought this cake. I transported this cake for 6 hours to Bhakti. Favorite cuts of meat. Ribs. Gotta be honest. Weird answer. It's not really like a cut of meat per se. It's not like a steak, but ribs. So good. So easy to make tasty. Beef ribs or pork ribs. They're both good and they're different. Yeah. Definitely that. I think that's. I mean, if not oil, cornstarch, and ice and sugar. Yes, also that. Cornstarch and ice and sugar. Cheers to bone and meat. It's true. Yeah, actually, that's not a bad point. It's like, what did we use that for? Cornstarch for or ice and sugar for fondant as well. That stops it from sticking to you and sticking to the table and shit like that. Because it's more of like a neutral, gluten-free version of flour. Do I have any pictures of my feasty feast? I think I have some bad pictures of the food I made for my 2 feasts. Like the pictures themselves just kind of ugly. Somewhere.
I think I have the dragon cake somewhere.
Yeah? Sick. I think I've got like pictures of, like the tomato products somewhere.
Didn't we like take a picture of a picture of a picture or something?
Well, actually, hang on. I've got that. There we go. Okay, I've got. Here it is. Here's a, honestly, not very good picture, but a picture of one of the courses for my 10th. So cooking, baking when the furry critters are shredding. So tip number 1 for cat fur in the air. Ignore it. Hair in your food's not that bad. weird take. It's not that bad. And then if your vents in your oven, because a lot of like ovens have like hoods on top of them, are strong enough, that might help. And then potentially pre-ventilating the area. So like if there's literally a bunch of dust in the air or cat hair in the air or whatever, A, like wipe down your own surfaces, and then B, like open up a bunch of windows and then come back like 30 minutes later. But honestly, my biggest hot take, just don't mind it. Just eat the cat hair. Meh. Like weird take. I go to a restaurant, there's hair in my food. I really don't care. I'm like, whatever, and just throw it up. So, L Kraagor take, but Let's just throw it there. Yeah, exactly.
That's that fancy special seasoning you were talking about.
Hmm?
The cat hair, that's that fancy special seasoning you were talking about.
Oh, disgusting.
Allergens for sure.
Truly vile. Truly, who would have said such a thing? I think that's all the pictures of my different food that I've got, but I might, I might post all of my fucking ridiculous write-ups. Like, God, I go really into detail here. I've got a little gallery. Ooh, here we go. Here's a little picture of my, Oh, another point that I've kind of forgot to make is like, Will drive sharing? Truly. Making any mistakes that you made, if you can, not like if you can make them seem like they were deliberate in some way, like that's how good acting works too. Like if you make a mistake on stage, just be like, yeah, we meant to do that. Lol. You know, if you make a mistake while cooking, can you either adapt the recipe really quickly or alter the aim that you're going for to make it seem like it wasn't a mistake in the first place? You know? Sons of John, Will of the Masses. Oh, I even put the whole, oh my god, I put the whole story in this write-up. God, Lisa, were you the one who had to read all this shit?
I believe
I put the entire quest write-up in my write-up.
Yep.
Sick.
Why do you
Man.
think I've been pushing for you since I ate it? Literally, every time you can ask anybody, hey, what is Kraagor done? Well, let me tell you about this roleplay feast he did.
Yeah, so here it is. So the Lord's Feast, which was my 10th, took me between 50 and 70 hours was my estimate. And it was 3 courses with a roleplay element that displayed multiple cooking techniques across multiple genres, with like savory and sweet and presentation. That's another thing. I'm not sure I touched on this. Like the presentation of the food. Like if you can manipulate that in some way, if you can control that in some way. Again, human memory and human perception really is dependent on everything. So if you're serving on paper plates, the food will taste bad. Sorry, it'll taste worse. If you are serving on, bejeweled, decorated plates with a candle-lit table and a wine selection to go along with it, again, this is a bit of a barrier to entry, and that admittedly is not fair. But if you have access to that, use it. Do it. I'm calling something else. And so yeah, literally.
I feel like you did more than 3 courses.
Maybe. Well, so here it's because it was an appetizer and a soup, so maybe it felt like it was 4. Oh, yes. Pre-appetizer, soup, main, cake. So 4.
There was 2 or 3 mains because we had to go to, I think, at least 7 places.
Right. Well, there's because there was a couple. Oh, because it might be like the I served the meat pies separately.
Yeah. They were themed by the people that we were visiting.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yep. And then I don't remember how many goddamn courses there were for the Feast of 4 Gods. I think there's probably 4 courses for the 4 Gods, but that was very difficult because I had to Yes, I am Master Dragon. Yes, I am soon to be Servant Knight. Apparently, actually, woo! Which I need to give Ali my break class, which has been filled up for weeks, and I just never sent it to you. I was told that my play was too monochromatic, and I totally agree with it. Wasn't thinking when I decided that menu. Yeah. Hoorah. Ironclad in April, hopefully. That's when I'm getting knighted. So I haven't pulled up to that. Woo! You get to see a chef night. Wouldn't that be a funny honorific? Yes, chef. Okay. All right. So, if there's no other questions, that's all. Hope you found this helpful. I hope the recording is helpful for anyone who wants to get higher level awards for cooking. Just because I know that I myself, in conclusion of this whole lesson, I myself struggled with trying to come up with basically literally how do I prove, and I'm sure people who do performance art for high level awards struggle with this. How do I prove to people that this was as difficult as making, a full suit of purple fucking epic plate mail? Because everyone knows that a full suit of epic purple plate mail is difficult, but you can struggle to prove why cooking was really difficult. And again, how do you even make something worth a 9 or a 10 or a masterhood? And it's about panache and wow factor and difficult techniques and yada yada and all that kind of stuff. Okay. If no other questions, then that's it.
thanks very much for helping out. And I will have this recording up as soon as I can. Thanks all for
Hoorah.
showing up.
Thank you. All right, now I have to go to a Paragon meeting, I think. So, bye.